Virtual reality is amazing. In it, you can feel like a fighter pilot returning to the carrier to land on the deck. Or you could feel like the quarterback who's throwing the winning touchdown. Or you could even explore deep space in a futuristic spaceship. And there's so much more to it. But for those of you that have never tried VR, it can be a little intimidating. I mean, there's so many questions like, which headset should I get? So that's what this video is for. It's to help answer some of those questions so that you might get to enjoy this amazing world of virtual reality. Let's talk about it. Welcome everyone to Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. So this video is not going to be a complete comprehensive guide for the beginners to VR. That would take forever. But instead, I hope it's a starting point for those of you interested in virtual reality and will give you kind of a jumping off point so you can continue your research to find out if virtual reality is right for you. Now that being said, you veterans out there are probably going to notice there's a lot of things that I either gloss over or don't even touch on. And that's because I'm trying to just pick out the most important points that I think someone new to VR would find important. So feel free, please, to leave comments below for anything I missed. And those of you watching this video that are new, I also recommend that you look at the comment section below because there's always a lot of great information left from other viewers. So what we're going to talk about in this video, we're going to talk about three big topics. Number one, I'm going to share with you a lot of the tips and tricks that I found that I think will be helpful to newcomers to VR. And then we're going to talk about 4 specific headsets that I think are appropriate for someone just getting into virtual reality now. And those headsets are the Quest 3, the Quest 2, the PSVR 2, which is the PlayStation Virtual Reality, and the Hewlett-Packard Reverb G2. And we're going to talk a little bit about each headset, and we're going to talk about specifically who I think those headsets are best for. So let's get into some of the tips and tricks that I've found. And we're going to start off with some important tips that might help you keep from damaging your virtual reality headset. And the first one is how you take your headset and store it. And you basically never ever want to have your lenses facing direct sunlight. These lenses can act like magnifying glasses, and they can actually burn the screens in the headset, basically ruining your virtual reality headset. So always be aware of where you leave your headset. I know a lot of people have just put it on a windowsill when they were done, and then all of a sudden the next day the sun comes up, and the next thing they know, they have a ruined virtual reality headset. And you don't want to do that. Now, all of the virtual reality headsets that we're going to be talking about will accommodate glasses and glasses wearers, and they can do that in different ways. For example, some of them actually have inserts that basically you pick the insert that's thick enough for your glasses or add an insert or something like that. And then some of them actually, like the Quest 3, have a built-in adjustment where you basically mechanically push a little button and you can adjust the distance of this facial interface to give you room for your glasses. Now, even though all the virtual reality headsets we're talking about will accommodate glasses, I strongly recommend against wearing glasses in your virtual reality headset. And the reason is it's very easy for your glasses to scratch the lenses in your virtual reality headset. And take it from me, I've done this in not one, but 2 of my virtual reality headsets, and it really is disheartening when all of a sudden you have scratches on this relatively expensive piece of equipment. So instead what I recommend is, obviously you can always wear contact lenses, that's one option, but the other option is to get some prescription inserts that actually just fit into the headset and snap over the lenses. For example, I use inserts from Hans VR, who is a channel supporter, but you can find them from other people as well. But the nice thing about the inserts is you put them on and you know that your lenses are protected. Now, you also want to think about who's using the headset. So if you're the only one using the headset, then you can get just a standard prescription insert, and it basically will snap in and you'll leave it there. But if you're sharing the headset among family members or friends, then you may want to consider magnetic inserts. And what that is it's an insert that you snap in there, but the actual lens itself will magnetically come off of the little adapter. And it's really easy if you're sharing it among people to just pull that out so the next person who doesn't need correction can use the headset. Now, I will caution you, a magnetic prescription lens typically is just a little thicker than the standard. So get the one that's right for your application. Since we're talking about visuals, another thing that I highly recommend that you do, and I see a lot of newcomers not do this, is adjust the IPD, which is the interpupillary distance of your eyes. It's basically how far apart your eyes are, and that varies from person to person. So all headsets have the ability to adjust that IPD, and for example on the Quest 3 it's a dial that you slide and you basically move it to it. On the G2, for example, it's a little slider that you move back and forth and it adjusts the lens. So the best way to also find out what your IPD is either ask your optometrist, or there are various apps out there that you can get on your smartphone that will measure your IPD. But getting your IPD set correctly in one of these is key to a really clear experience. So the other thing I want to talk about, which is very important for newcomers, is motion sickness. So some people do experience motion sickness when they first try virtual reality. Now, if you do experience this, it's not the end of the world. Most people take a little bit of time to get what we call VR legs. It's kind of like getting on a ship. You get your sea legs. You kind of have to develop VR legs over time as well. Now, what I would tell you right up front, very important, if you are doing virtual reality and you at all start to feel nauseous, stop immediately. Do not try to power through, because what that can cause is it can cause your body to automatically start to have a reaction whenever you put a headset on, that it will automatically feel nauseous. And it takes a lot longer to work through that problem than to just stop and gradually use virtual reality until you're comfortable. Now, I also recommend you start with experiences that are tame. The last thing you want to do is your first experience in VR is to jump on a roller coaster, because I can almost guarantee you that will make you sick right away. Instead, start with experiences where you're just kind of standing in a room and you're actually moving around a room or something without a lot of fast action in it. Now, once you start to move up and you want to start actually exploring the world and moving a lot more, there are two forms of locomotion that are typical in virtual reality. One of them is called free movement, and that's just like any other video game where you use the controller and you basically move around the world. But there's also teleportation, and the teleportation option is typically a lot more comfortable for people new to VR. You have a lot better chance of not getting sick if you use the teleportation method, and then as you get comfortable with that, then you can try the free movement. So that's the big things with motion sickness. The other thing that we want to talk about is the importance of choosing the right room for your virtual reality experience. So there's basically two types of situations in general for virtual reality. You can either have what's called a seated experience, which is where you're just sitting in one place and you might be moving your arms, but you're not walking around. And those can be useful for things like racing simulators, flying simulators, and also if you're in a space that doesn't have a lot of room. The other method is called room scale VR. And room scale VR is it's a really cool thing, because you pick out a play space and you're able to kind of walk around and move in that space freely. Now, the way that works is virtually every headset out there will develop some sort of guardian boundary when you first set it up, which will give you some virtual walls that will alert you when you're getting close to your real world walls. Because I can tell you, you can get lost in virtual reality where you don't know where you are in the room anymore, and suddenly you'll be smacked right up against a wall. In that same vein, you'll want to pick a VR room with high ceilings. I learned this the hard way because I was originally playing in a low ceilinged room, and I went to throw a grenade and whack, smacked my hand on the ceiling. So make sure you find a room that has tall ceilings. Make sure you don't have any ceiling fans or anything like that. Just be very careful that way. The other thing you want to look at is a room that is well lit, because the way the headsets work is they use cameras to track where they are. So you need to have light in the room. And then also you want to make sure you find a room that is isolated from any children or pets. just for safety, because when you're in the headset, if a little animal comes running up, you may not see the animal and you could hurt your pet, and that also goes for a small child. So those are some things to be aware of for setting up and getting into virtual reality as far as our room space goes. Now, some other things to think about are there's a very, very important feature that you will find yourself using a lot, and that's called the recenter function. The reason recentering is important is because at some point you will find that what you feel your view isn't what you're actually seeing. You'll be crooked. For example, instead of sitting behind the steering wheel in the race car, you'll be offset, or you might be actually looking at your body to the side and crooked. Whenever you find yourself in that situation, you want to do what's called recentering. And every system has a different method of recentering. For example, in Steam, there's a little icon that you click and it will recenter your view. You can see here, so you can actually see where you're going and it gets everything aligned. On the right controller, there's a Meta button. You just hold this button down and it will recenter you. Same thing with the PlayStation VR 2. The right controller has an options button on the PlayStation controller that you will hold down and recenter. So that's important, and you will probably find yourself doing that quite a bit. A final tip is also something that I learned a little bit the hard way. You want to be aware of what kind of activity you're doing in virtual reality. So if you're doing anything that's athletic, that is fitness related or anything, you want to be a little aware of the facial interface, which is typically like here, this is a cloth and a foam interface. This is typically what you'll see come in a lot of VR headsets. This thing acts like a sweat sponge. And I can tell you, there is nothing worse than putting on a headset somebody just used and this thing is soaking wet with sweat. So if you're going to be doing a lot of active VR things, or you're going to be sharing this, there are outside VR facial interfaces that are made of pleather, which are really easy to wipe down, and there's even some that are made of silicone. So you just want to make sure you basically get the one that fits whatever virtual reality headset you're using. So that's hopefully will save you a little in the gross department as you're using virtual reality. So I want to talk real quick about field of view and also managing your expectations of virtual reality. So field of view is basically how wide you can see in the headset and also how tall you can see in the headset. And ideally, of course, we would love to have the same field of view that we have in real life. But unfortunately, that's not really possible right now. There is not a consumer level graphics card or computer system that would be able to put out the amount of power that a virtual reality headset would need to achieve that level of detail. So instead, compromises have to be made. And so virtual reality headset makers limit that field of view in order to get good performance out of a headset. So what that means is no matter what virtual reality headset you end up using, you will feel like you're wearing a set of goggles. Now, some goggles are bigger than others, so that's where you get into the virtual reality headset's FOV or field of view. But just be aware and be ready that it will feel like you are wearing goggles when you try a virtual reality headset. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the lenses as well. So traditionally, all the virtual reality headsets when they first came out were using what are called Fresnel lenses. And you can tell these kind of lenses because they have concentric circles in the lenses that you can easily see. Well, we've just started moving to a new form of lens, which is called a pancake lens. And that's what you will find in the Quest 3. So the difference is, on the old Fresnel lenses with all the rings, you basically have to look directly through the center of that lens to maintain a sharp image. If you look to the sides, it gets blurry. And it also means that you have to work really hard to find that sweet spot of where that clarity is the clearest, and you have to work to stay there. So that's the big problem with Fresnel lenses. Well, pancake lenses alleviate a lot of that. So with the new pancake lenses, you have edge-to-edge clarity when you're looking through the headset. That doesn't mean you have to look right through the middle. That means you can look all around the lens, just like you do moving your eyes in real life. And it also means that that sweet spot is a lot easier to find. You don't have to work so hard to keep that image clear. So those are kind of the two different lenses that we're talking about when we talk about headsets. So let's start talking about the headsets. So one important thing to know is that each headset has its own ecosystem. Think of it kind of like Android versus Apple. So you're going to basically lock yourself into an ecosystem depending on what headset you decide to get. Now, there are basically three that are at the top of the heap right now that are basically what we're looking at with these headsets. The first one is the Meta or Oculus Store, and it has over 500 titles that are currently available for it. Then you have the PlayStation VR 2, which is touting about 200 plus titles right now for virtual reality. And then you have PC VR, which is your PC gaming experience, which the gaming experiences for VR and that are in the thousands. So those are kind of the choices. Now, you'll find a lot of the same games in each of the ecosystems. They'll port them over from one to the other. Typically, the PC VR games can have the best graphics, but they're also the most demanding. And the Quest titles are a little more simplistic. And then the PlayStation VR itself is right in between the two. So that kind of gives you a scale of which ones are the most high fidelity experiences versus the ones that just play a lot better. So we're going to start off talking about this Quest 3. And I can tell you right now, there has never been an easier recommendation for someone new to VR. This Quest 3, just to save some time, is the headset I would recommend for probably 90% of you folks out there. You know, in the past, we've always had trade-offs with headsets. We've had to, sacrifice something to get something else. Well, this Quest 3 is the closest thing I've ever seen to an affordable headset that actually doesn't really have any of those limiting factors. Number one, it's wireless. So you can use this without attaching it to a computer. It can do everything in itself, which means it's portable. It means you can pack this in a bag and take it over to a friend's house, and you guys can use it there. It's got the great title selection, like I said, 500 plus. It's also the only headset out of the headsets we're going to talk about that uses those pancake lenses that I talked about a moment ago. And really, that's the thing that makes this such an easy recommendation, because the difference you get out of those pancake lenses versus the old Fresnel lenses, it's night and day. It truly is a whole generational leap. So this headset, for most of you folks out there, this is the headset to buy to get involved with virtual reality. This is one of the easiest headsets to set up. It's really easy to use. It's just a fantastic, fantastic creation, and I think that's why you're seeing so many people talking about this headset. Now, there are some cons to it. Obviously, one of the big ones is the battery life. So you're likely going to need to come up with some extra accessories to extend the battery life. For example, this is my choice. It's an aftermarket head strap that actually adds a battery to it. So that is one of the cons. You will likely find yourself wanting to spend a little bit more money to get this headset probably a little more comfortable and give it that battery life that it's going to need. But all those problems are easily remedied. So again, this is the top pick that I would say the most of you out there should pick up a Quest 3 if you're ready to get into virtual reality. Now, the other really amazing thing about this, we talked about the standalone, this is also capable of being a PC VR headset, so you can connect this to your computer and also get that entire ecosystem as well. So it's really got both ecosystems, the Meta for those exclusives, and it's also got the PC library. So it's just a fantastic device, and again, I can't recommend this highly enough. This is the headset that most of you should be looking at buying if you're going to get into VR. So, but let's talk a little bit about the other headsets as well. So we've also got the Quest 2, which is the previous generation to the Quest, and it is worse than the Quest 3 in just about every way except for affordability. So the advantage is you still have the wireless experience, you still have access to the Meta Store, but the visuals in it with the Fresnel lenses, everything about it is worse than the Quest 3. So the only reason I would recommend you get a Quest 2 is if you absolutely just cannot afford the Quest 3. Then obviously you can look at doing that. And if you're going to go that route, look at the used market, because a lot of people are selling their Quest 2s now. You might be able to pick up a Quest 2 for $100 or less, and it might even come with a bunch of accessories that you would have to buy now with the new headsets. So that's the only reason I would recommend anybody think about buying a Quest 2. So now there are some of you out there that may not want to support Meta. Some of you might have some feelings towards the company, and I completely understand that. And if that's the case, then you might want to look at our other two headsets on the list. So the first one we're going to talk about is the PlayStation VR 2. And this headset is an amazing headset as far as the quality of it. The games that are out there for it are considered a little bit better in quality as far as the fidelity than the Quest titles. When they're ported over, typically they're made just a little bit better. The headset itself has OLED screens, which are the only screens that really truly give you the dark blacks when you're in a really dark scene. And just in general, there's a lot of really good tech. For example, not only do the controllers have haptics, they vibrate just like the other headsets we're talking about, but the headset itself also has haptics installed in it. So that can give you a very unique experience as well. It also has some advanced technology like eye tracking, which helps it get a better level of performance, and also can be implemented in some games. Now, the downside to the PlayStation VR 2 is that you really need to already have a PlayStation 5, or else it's really too expensive if you have to buy the headset and the PlayStation 5 together. You're better off to get the Quest 3. But the fact that it does plug directly into the PlayStation, it's still a pretty easy setup, and it works pretty well, but it is wired. So you don't get that wireless freedom that you get from the Quest series. So the only people that I'd really recommend the PlayStation VR 2 for are people that already are in the PlayStation ecosystem. They may have had the original PSVR 1, or people that already have their PlayStation 5 and they really like PlayStation. And for those of you out there that are planning on doing some more horror-style experiences, like you want to do the scary, the horror VR, well, the PlayStation VR 2 will be the best fit for that because of the ability to get those really dark screens. So it will probably scare you more than any of the other headsets on the list. So that's who I'd recommend the PlayStation VR 2 for. The final headset on the list is a little bit older, and that's the old tried and true Hewlett-Packard Reverb G2. Now this headset I've had for a long time. This has been my go-to. I have recommended this headset to everybody for best value, and that's held true right up until the Quest 3 came out. The one thing about this, some people really want to have a headset that plugs directly into their computer. In the old days, that was the best way to get visuals, was to have a direct connection with a display port into the video card on the computer. That's not really the case that I'm finding now with the Quest 3. The Quest 3 wireless is actually, from what I've tested, giving me just as good of visuals as I was getting from these wired headsets. This headset certainly has the best audio out of the bunch, so the audio of this headset is better than all the other ones. And the resolution is actually the highest of the group as well. But it still has the Fresnel lenses, just like all the other headsets except for the Quest 3. And because of that, you're just not going to quite get that visual experience out of this that you're going to get out of the Quest 3. It is wired. You have to have a computer so you don't get that freedom of movement from the wireless. And again, this headset is coming to end of life. I believe HP is pretty much starting to finish with their inventory, and they're not going to be available in the near future. So if you are looking for a PC VR only headset, I still really like this headset, but it is not the best buy anymore now that the Quest 3 is out. So let's go ahead and compare these headsets side by side and just show you real quick kind of the differences in the resolution and all those types of things and the pricing and everything like that. But again, at the end of the day, The Quest 3 is my recommendation for most of you folks out there. The Quest 2, if you just can't afford anything more expensive. The PlayStation VR 2, if you already have a PlayStation 5, and if you're going to be playing experiences that are more horror-oriented or where you're going to be in dark scenes. And the old Reverb G2, just because it's been such a great headset for so long, and some of you out there still want to have a headset that directly plugs into that display port on your computer. So that's kind of my wrap-up of the headsets and what I think are important. But let's talk a little bit about what we see coming in the future for virtual reality. And these are all rumors. None of this is confirmed, but it's kind of the general feel of what everybody in the virtual reality community feels is likely to happen. So we've been talking about the Valve Deckard. In fact, forever. I even talked about it in my speculations of upcoming headsets 2 years ago when I did my last video for beginners. And here we are still in the same spot. We're waiting for Valve to announce this new headset and see what it's going to bring to the table. Now, I would caution you, I don't see this headset as being a value option. It's probably going to be quite expensive, but it also may reset the standard of what virtual reality is and what it can do. So let's also talk a little bit about the Pico series of headsets. So if you're not located in the United States, you have the option to get what's called a Pico headset. They're not really officially available here in the US, but elsewhere in the world, look into the Pico series. They're like the Quest series, typically just a little cheaper, and from what I've seen, not quite as good. They're very close, but they might be just behind just a little bit. There's rumors that the new Pico 5 line is going to come out, and that's going to also include the Pico 5 Pro Max, which is going to be a headset that's like the Quest 3, but it also is going to incorporate a DisplayPort. So for all those folks out there that want to have that DisplayPort, that might be a good option for you. The other big news is Samsung. Samsung has formed a partnership with both Google and Qualcomm. There's not much detail about this, but everybody's expecting some sort of VR-style headset that's going to hit the market from that power trio. So we'll see what happens there, but that's something to think about as well. And then one other last note I want to mention, there is a real possibility that the Quest 3 will come out with a 256 gigabyte version, which is double the amount of storage of the base version. When the Quest 2 launched, they basically did the same thing where they had a 64 gigabyte version, and less than a year later, they actually introduced double the memory at 128 for the same price that the old 64 gigabyte was. So I wouldn't be surprised if within a year you're going to see a new Quest 3 for the same price as the base model now, and it's going to have twice the memory. So if that's something that you'd rather wait for that value, you can certainly wait and see if that happens, but I have a strong feeling it probably will. So that's kind of my wrap-up. If you are interested in any of these VR headsets, I have affiliate links down in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it. If you want to help the channel out and donate, please hit that super thanks. Your donation really helps us continue to create content like this. So obviously, if you have any more questions about virtual reality, please leave them in the comments. I will do my best to answer any questions. And I thank you guys so much for watching. So until next time, remember to get your game on.